I mean, seeing someone go down to 4 cards is so rare, and it's so unlucky. It's so unfortunate.
Especially with the Vancouver Mulligan rule where you get a scry. Your 5 has to be absolutely atrocious to pitch it back when you get a scry. I think that I'm more than likely to keep a no-land 5 hand with a scry than to go to 4 and risk it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't get as far as Ali does without a little bit of luck. So
that's true.
I'm sure you know he's going to get a good 4-card hand.
I've actually won a fair number of mulligan to 4s in my Magic career. One of the most memorable was against Max Tietz when I won the Somerset Open with Junk Reanimator shortly after Dragon's Maze was printed, where my 4-card hand was 2 lands, Mulch Grizzly Salvage.
Oh, sweet. I mean,
just the perfect 4 that you could have.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes with those really small hands, just so long as you have a good start, sometimes it doesn't matter that you're missing a large number of cards, you know.
So at this point, I think that even if Ollie has something that he can do with this 4-card hand, there's a very good chance that he could just get punished by all of the value that Jeff is able to generate. And it looks like there's at least 1 Tron piece in Ollie's hand. I have to imagine he's going to keep. He's going to scry, put it on the bottom. Jeff is in the middle of his scry. Since Ollie scried first, we have to imagine he's on the play.
Yeah, and even if Ollie had a 4-card hand that had no lands, I think I mean I probably would have just kept it anyway.
Same.
You know, it's so hard to win a game with only 3.
Looks like Jeff kept his scry on top, so not only is he up a card on the mulligan, but he also scried to the top, so it's a virtual 6 that he knows that what he has to work with. And Ollie had a play. Looks like he actually has 2 lands in his hand even.
Well, that's good.
Even though Eye of Ugin doesn't quite tap for mana just yet, and he did just draw into another Tron piece that he already has in Urza's Mine, but he was able to Ancient Stirrings into another Urza's Mine. When it rains, it pours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got the Expedition map, so maybe he'll be able to get something going.
So he is able to play that second Urza's Mine, get an Expedition map that will let him get a second Tron piece.
So one thing that these 2 decks do have in common is neither of them have that much that they do impactful on the opening turns. They're really just looking to develop their mana. Once they develop their mana, then we'll start seeing them making moves on the board.
So it looked like Ollie drew another Tron piece. I'm not sure exactly what it is. He very quickly got that power plant, so there's a good possibility that it could have just been an Urza's Tower. On Jeff's turn, we just saw a Plains into a Wall of Omens, and then he drew the card. Now, I do believe that I see a Birds of Paradise in Jeff's hand, and I think that he had that in his hand on turn 1, but opted to not cast it. That definitely would seem kind of strange if so, and if it is, I kind of wonder why.
Yeah, if that was the case, I guess it means that his hand was mostly mana, but even then his life total is not that important. So one thing that's interesting about Ollie's hand right now, though, is if he does have a tower in hand, that means that he's going to have 9 mana on his turn, and I believe I saw an Ugin. So that could be, despite Ollie having the unfortunate circumstances of mulliganing down to 4 cards, he might just have a really powerful play. If Ugin hits the board...
He'll mull to 4, turn 4 Ugin?
Yeah, I mean, if
that seems fair.
Yeah. And I mean, Jeff, he's not a Jund deck that can just Maelstrom Pulse it. He's not... There's just not going to be much he can do about it.
I actually don't think Jeff has any answers for Ugin.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff is not really looking to interact more than he has to.
And yeah, he did have that tower. We are going to see a turn 4 Ugin. Aintrazi, ladies and gentlemen, very powerful magician.
Wow, really, really impressive. And there's a very good chance that this just runs away with the game. I would find it pretty surprising if Jeff is able to cobble together any kind of board presence. I think he's going to be looking to find some sort of way that he can combo out, and a lot of the creatures he deploys from here on out are most likely just going to be trying to keep Ollie busy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, even in instances where Jeff is able to, get his board going fairly early when both players don't mulligan, I mean, I don't think there's much Jeff's going to be able to do against a turn 4 Ugin, even if he had a full hand of cards.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing he can do is try to deploy multiple threats a turn so that the Ugin plus won't be enough to keep the board clean, and the Ugin will have to repeatedly minus. But in this particular case, Ali's going to be able to plus, kill the Eternal Witness, and not have to worry about an attack back. So the Ugin's going to be able to go up to 6 and threaten minusing the next turn.
Absolutely. Now, it does also look like Ollie has an Eye of Ugin in his hand. He does have enough mana to activate it here. Jeff just played an Eternal Witness, got back Wooded Foothills, fetched out to cast a Birds of Paradise. I would not be surprised to see Ali just kill this Eternal Witness, then activate his Eye of Ugin to go find a giant creature.
Yeah, and I mean, this is really showcasing the power of Tron. Sometimes these big mana decks get a bad rap for not being able to, well...
And Jeff's just going to pack it in.
Yeah.
He's probably not going to be able to beat that Ugin. He's also probably not going to be able to beat the Ulamog that Ali is more than likely going to find with his Eye of Ugin.
Yeah, and we can see there kind of what I was saying before. Ali basically won that game by establishing control over the board. I think you can look at Jeff as the aggressor and Ali as kind of the control.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboards for these players and see exactly what they plan on doing. Aintrazi, he is on Green Red Tron, even though it looked more like an Ugin tribal deck there. He does have 2 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Thragtusk, 4 copies of Matrix Claim, a Ghost Quarter, 3 Pithing Needle, 2 Spellskite, and a Fire Spout. Andrew, what do you think he's going to do there?
So the Fire Spout is going to be a great card to help keep the board clear. Relic of Progenitus also has some value because Jeff has not only Eternal Witness but Revelark, and we've seen a lot that Jeff looks to loop those cards. So he looks to get a lot of value out of them, even though there's only a couple copies in each. So I think that Ali is likely going to bring in those 2 cards. If he has something that he wants to Pithing Needle, I don't think there is anything, so I don't think that card will come in. So it's probably just those 3 cards. Maybe the Thragtusk.
Yeah, I definitely could see some number of Pithing Needle. It's a good way to answer Fulminator Mage if he's worried about Fulminator Mage, but it can also just shut off Kiki Jiki. That way he doesn't have to worry about getting backdoored.
Absolutely.
As far as Jeff Hoogland's deck is concerned, he does have 1 Engineered Explosives, 3 Lightning Helix, 2 Stony Silence, 1 Slaughter Games, 1 Burnt and Forge Tender, 1 copy of Spellskite, 2 additional Fulminator Mage, 1 Eidolon of Rhetoric, Reclamation Sage, a Magus of the Moon, and a Linvala Keeper of Silence. What do you think Jeff's going to bring in?
So I think a few of these cards are specifically for the Green-Red Tron matchup. The Fulminator Mages, for sure, you really want to bust up their lands. Magus of the Moon is also another card that can do a lot of disruption on its mana. And then also Stony Silence is a card that can be a really good tool at combating the Tron deck, because the Tron deck, not only does it have the Oblivion Stone, but a lot of its early cantrips are all artifacts.
Yeah, I actually really like Stony Silence against Tron. Those cogs, Chromatic Star, Chromatic Sphere, really are what make the deck tick. It allows them to cast their spells by giving them colored mana from their colorless mana, and an early Stony Silence can go ahead and shut all of that off. Now, Jeff Hoogland and Ali Aintrazi are both veterans of playing in the StarCityGame.com Opens, and you can be too. Let's take a look at the Season 1 schedule. To show you the rest of the events that you could play for the rest of the season. This is only the 2nd stop in the 1st season. We started off with the Las Vegas Invitational Weekend, where Caleb Shearer won with his Abzan aggro deck in Standard and Affinity and Modern, and Brian Bronduin won the Standard Open that same weekend. Cincinnati was next, where we saw Bobby Fortinelli last weekend was able to take that down with Amulet Bloom. We're currently in Charlotte. We have Atlanta coming up, which is the release weekend for Oath of the Gatewatch. Next we'll be in Columbus for Standard, and then we have the Regional Championships February 6th during the Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch weekend. After that, we'll be in Louisville for more Modern. Then we'll be in Philly for Legacy, and then you can see me and Andrew Boswell. We're going to be commentating that one, so that'll be sweet.
Cannot wait.
Next we'll be in Indy for Standard, Baltimore for Standard, and we'll cap it off in Columbus, Standard and Modern, April 15th through 17th with a Standard top 8. Now, if you play in any of these Season 1 Opens, you do get this gorgeous Kitchen Lynx playmat absolutely for free.
Yeah, super sweet. This cute little kitty's just gorging on milk. Can't get enough of it, dumping it all over itself. So cute. So
the Lynx that's in the back, I've had some time to look at it as we keep posting it up, and it looks like he has a ladle in his mouth that has soap suds on it, which is pretty cute.
I like to think of it more as a pipe. I think that's cooler.
I'm a little disturbed by the one on the far right that you see there with a knife. It's just a cutthroat Lynx.
Yeah, murder cat.
Got a murder cat back there. So again, this is absolutely free, limited edition playmat for entry into any of our Season 1 Opens. And as we saw with like Tassiper last year, these are insanely popular, so you make sure you get out to one of our Opens so that you can get them absolutely free. So we're coming back here. Ali Aintrazi is on Green Red Tron. Jeff Hoogland currently first on our leaderboard on the Kiki Core deck that he's been putting so much work in. They're both 8-2, battling to have some good records going into the rest of this tournament so that they can have a good shot at making the top 8. Jeff is done shuffling. Ali is still shuffling. Either that or he's on another mulligan. Although it doesn't matter. We saw he went to 4 last game and then just played Hoogland on turn 4.
Yeah, I mean, a little mulligan's not going to hold Ali back. One thing that I find really interesting about this matchup is I think game 1, it's pretty clear that Jeff is the aggressor and Ali is kind of the more controlling deck. But Jeff brings in a lot of good tools to fight Ali. And so I think you're not going to see a clear distinction between who's the aggressor and who's the defender. I think you're going to see a lot more of, role sort of change depending on how the flow of the game is going.
I definitely agree with that. We also have to remember, though, in the large scheme of things, that's all going to be on Ali to try and do some of the big broken stuff that he's trying to do.
Absolutely.
If Jeff is tripping up and Ali doesn't have anything going on, nothing's really going to happen. But in the reverse scenario, at the very least, Jeff can be chipping away with small creatures.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the advantages of playing one of these creature-based combo decks is a lot of times, if your combo pieces don't line up, sometimes you just don't actually get to do anything. But if you're playing a creature-based combo deck, even if your combo pieces aren't lining up the way you want them to, you still get to play a bunch of creatures that, can attack, can block, can make trades, and that's one of the big advantages to a deck like Jeff's.
Yeah, having that plan B is very important. Green Red Tron technically has a plan B in Wormcoil Engine, but that still costs 6 mana, and if your lands are being attacked, it can be pretty rough. And we have seen before, last weekend, there was actually a game on coverage where Jeff was against Green Red Tron. In fact, it was against Ali Aintrazi.
Oh, really? Wow.
Where he was able to use Fulminator Mage and Eternal Witness and eventually Kiki-Jiki to just keep him off of ever actually hitting 6 lands. So it is possible.
Kiki-Jiki and Fulminator Mage is kind of a good combo.
That is a very good combo.
Yeah.
So it is pretty sweet here that we have a rematch from our top 8 last weekend in Cincinnati. Jeff Hoogland with his Kiki core deck, Ali Aintrazi with his trusty Green Red Trod deck. Ali is mulliganing to 6. Jeff has gone ahead and kept his opening 7. But again, mulligans aren't going to phase Ali.
Yeah, for sure. And the fact that this is a rematch kind of highlights one of my favorite things about the Opens is that you get to see a lot of these big name players run into each other time and time again. And a lot of times you'll see one player play against another, lose against him, and then play against him again. And it's interesting to see how he adapts. Does he change a card in his sideboard? Does he change a card in his main deck? Maybe his mulligan decisions change. Maybe his playstyle changes. Maybe just the way he values certain cards change. And so that's one of the exciting things about, seeing these players is you really get to see them evolve as players, and you get to see, kind of those rivalries and those things evolve over time as well.
Absolutely. So it looks like Ollie's going to take a look at his 6 here. Let's see if it's going to be acceptable. Remember, he does get a scry with the new Vancouver mulligan rule.
Yeah, that first mulligan, I really feel like it's kind of free.
So he has kept. We're going to go ahead and scry. It looked like it was white bordered, so it's probably going to go on top. But I am wrong, and it's going to the bottom.
Maybe it was a Tron piece that he already had.
Fair enough. So Jeff's going to go ahead and start off here with a Windswept Teeth. He's going to fetch out a green producing land, Stomping Ground, cast the Birds of Paradise, and pass it on over to Ollie.
Man, and Jeff is running hot. I mean, he just always has that bird.
He is running pretty hot.
What a baller.
Although, bird doesn't really match up against turn 4 Hoogland. Not going to lie.
Yeah, that's true.
So Ollie's going to lead off with a forest into an expedition map. And he does have some Tron pieces in his hand, but I imagine he's going to play that forest so that he doesn't get hit by a turn 2 Fulminator Mage, so he can actually use the expedition map next turn. Jeff's just going to cast a Voice of Resurgence, play a Wooded Foothills, and pass the turn.
Yeah, that's a really good play on Ollie's part to, think about the possibility of just a turn 2 Fulminator Mage, because that can be devastating if it's on his first land.
Absolutely. So Jeff's just going to go ahead and draw for the turn. He's going to play Windswept Heath, get in for 2 with that Voice of Resurgence, pass the turn back to Ollie, who's going to crack the expedition map on his end step and undoubtedly find another Tron piece.
And the fact that Jeff's only pressure is a Voice of Resurgence is kind of indicative of the fact that Jeff isn't really bringing this deck to the tournament to fight decks like Green Red Tron. I think Jeff is really looking to be fighting against decks that have counter spells like Splinter Twin, or decks that are trying to kill his creatures like Jund or Abzan. Those are the matchups where you really want to have Voice of Resurgence, and when you're up against a deck that's doing things that are a bit more broken, less interactive, Voice of Resurgence is, it's just not that much of a clock.
Absolutely. Now, it is important to note that that card is pretty good against Pyroclasm.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is in Ollie's deck. Looks like Ollie's got a split sleeve here. He's going to replace it and then draw for his turn. It does appear that Jeff has a Restoration Angel in his hand, so we are going to put some additional power onto the battlefield here, more than likely on Ollie's end step. But Ollie does have another Tron piece in hand, and he's one more piece away from assembling the monstrosity.
Yeah, it looks like Ali has a lot of land in his hand, and with Jeff's only pressure being a Voice of Resurgence, it looks like Ali's going to have time to execute his game plan. So it's really Jeff's responsibility to get a Fulminator Mage or something like that to disrupt Ali's mana base.
Now, it is important to note that since Jeff has this Restoration Angel in his hand that he can play on the end step here, Ali could just be dead to a Gigi next turn.
Yeah, that would be really, really good for Jeff. And there's really nothing Ali can do about that. He has no instant speed removal. You know, if Jeff is going to do that, Ali just says, okay, odds are you're not going to do that often. Let's go to the next game and maybe I'll win that one. Yep,
so Ali's going to go ahead and Sylvan Scrying to pick up the final piece of Tron that he needed. He is going to play the power plant, keep the mine in his hand. So if he does make it to next turn, he is going to have 8 mana available if Jeff doesn't do anything to disrupt his mana. And that is 8 mana. He can cast a Nugan if he has it.
Yeah, and it looks like Jeff has a Chord of Calling in his hand, so I believe that Jeff may want to just Chord for a Fulminator Mage on his turn.
That definitely sounds like a good play. Now it looks like Jeff's going to go ahead and fetch out a Forest and a Plains. He does not get another red mana to give him access to 3 red mana, so he might have another land in his hand that he can use for that. Maybe trying to mask the fact that he has Kiki-Jiki or not. I imagine if he had it, he would just play it and win the game here, so he's trying to figure out what his best route of action is going to be. More than likely, he's going to end up being searching for that Fulminator Mage to try and set Ali back.
Yeah, Ali really would like to get his mana going, but I'm not sure if he has any big payouts in his hand. Have you seen any?
It looks like he has a couple Oblivion Stones, which with 8 mana, with 8 mana, he can use that to wipe the board.
Yeah.
They will leave behind an elemental token for that Voice of Resurgence, but Jeff will have to rebuild his board to make it actually do anything.
So one thing that's interesting is we were talking about sideboard cards, and one of the ones that we mentioned.
Looks like Jeff is going to go ahead and Chord of Calling for that Fulminator Mage and take out the Yours Is Mine. Power Plant, sorry.
Excuse me. One of the cards that we were talking about before was Stony Silence, and one thing that's interesting about that sideboard card is if Ali gets a chance to really develop his mana and starts to stabilize the board, top deck Stony Silence probably won't amount to much. So if Jeff does draw that card, that's one that he's going to want to draw sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. So Ali's gone ahead and drawn for his turn after taking 3 damage from that Restoration Angel. Looks like it was a Grove of the Burn Willows for the turn. He doesn't quite have Tron to turn on over the next couple of turns. I imagine that he might just play this Urza's Mine and hope to draw into the power plant.
Yeah, either way, Ali's, kind of stumbling around a little bit. That Fulminator Mage from Jeff was extremely timely. It's exactly what he needs, and it looks like he's got another chord. And is this game over? I think this is game over.
Yes, that is game over.
Kaboom!
All right, well, in fabulous fashion, we have Jeff Hoogland is going to take game 2 against Ali Aintrazi to even it up at 1 apiece. We've got the sideboards pulled back up here. I think that we're just going to stick with what we have. I don't think anybody's going to change anything.
Yeah, I don't think anything really changes on when one player's on the play or the draw. I think they're basically both going to be doing the same things. Each player has pretty linear strategy.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with that. I don't think that we're really going to change much, whether it being on the play or the draw. The cards that are good in these matchups are just going to be good regardless.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Fulminator Mage is, you just need to Fulminate Ali no matter what. Doesn't matter if you're on the play or the draw.
Absolutely. So I do want to point out that Jeff Hoogland does have a Magus of the Moon in his deck.
Ooh, is that like one of our creature collection cards?
That is like one of our creature collection that you're actually going to be able to get through game night. So currently in January here we have GRIZZLYBRAND, big old bear. Every week in January you can get GRIZZLYBRAND tokens and pins for having game night at your store, which is a fun, friendly event for you and your friends.
Yeah, super sweet. I mean, a lot of times, you come to these bigger tournaments and things are a lot more competitive, but Magic is just a fun game. And while these bigger tournaments are fun, it's nice to have something that's a little closer to home, a little more casual. You can kind of bring your brews when you're first trying to sort them out. And game night is a great place to do that.
Absolutely. Now in February, we do have Magus of the Moon. So we've got the friendly cow here is going to turn all of your lands into the bloodiest of moons. And every week in February, again, Magus of the Moo tokens and pins with Game Night presented by StarCityGames.com. And then in March, we have GRIZZLYBRAND, which has been affectionately named Tina.
Yeah, I really, really like that one.
So again, in March, GRIZZLYBRAND tokens and pins for game night presented by StarCityGames.com. If you would like to get your local game store set up with game night, please have them get in touch with our in-store program representatives via email, gamenight@StarCityGames.com.
Hey, you know what? That GRIZZLYBRAND, it's a 3/1. It looks like it's haste. It's pretty aggressive for a llama.
That's a big LLAMAMANCER.
Yeah, really big LLAMAMANCER.
So we're coming back here. Ali Aintrazi on Green Red Tron, Jeff Hoogland on Kiki Cord. They're both 8-2. We're shuffling up, getting ready for Game 3. Jeff is currently in first place on our leaderboard, and he has just been working on this Kiki Cord deck for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit before, but I really, really like seeing Jeff do well with this deck. This deck has been his baby. He's been working on it for a long time. He's known as a brewer, and seeing him do well with one of his brews just really shows how if you have an idea and you work on it really, really hard over a long period of time, it can really go somewhere. I mean, he is at the top of the standings for our player championship, and he's, you know, that's where his goal is he wants to be there this upcoming year.
So it looks like both players have finally kept their starting 7. Ollie's going to lead off with a power plant into an expedition map, which is the perfect start. If he has another Tron piece, he can use that expedition map next turn to find the last piece that he has and assemble this on turn 3. And I don't really know if Jeff can beat a Karn on turn 3.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about last game, Jeff had his Fulminator Mage kind of just in time. If Ali had gotten one more turn before that Fulminator hit the board, Ali would have had access to something like 8 or 9 mana, I believe. And so the fact that Ali's on the play this game is, you know, can really, really turn the tables.
So Jeff is just going to fetch out a Stomping Ground with his Windswept Heath, cast the Birds of Paradise, and pass it back to Ollie. He's going to take a draw. Now, it doesn't look like he has another Tron piece, so he's trying to decide how he wants to sequence his lands, whether it be this Grove of the Burn Willows or maybe some other land that he has in his hand before he uses this expedition map.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting about this is even though neither of these players tend to do anything particularly impactful on the first 2 turns of the game, tempo is still really relevant. They still really want to proactively develop their mana, and then they're going to be impacting the board. So the play is going to be really good for Ali, and hopefully he can, you know, make use of that initiative.
Absolutely. Now what's real interesting is it looks like Jeff has Stony Silence in his opening hand. So I'd like to see if he's going to play Stony Silence next turn or maybe Voice of Resurgence and try and get a clock going.
Yeah, I have to imagine that he would want to play the Stony Silence. I mean, it just has so much more of a dramatic effect the earlier you play it, and the Voice of Resurgence isn't that much of a clock.
So it looks like Jeff is just going to play his Stony Silence after putting the Wooded Foothills on the battlefield. Ollie's going to crack his Expedition map in response, since that's the last chance he's going to have to do it. Find an Urza's Mine, and at this point he's just looking for a Tower of Power to turn on that Urzatron for his, I don't want to say combo deck, but that's really what it is. He's trying to assemble 3 lands and get a whole bunch of mana to put some giant things on the battlefield.
And he's really hoping that he doesn't draw any Chromatic Stars or Chromatic Spheres, because they're going to be dead draws with that Stony Silence on the board. Yeah,
this might end up being very good for Jeff if it can blank some number of draw steps for Ollie.
Yeah, a really, really powerful sideboard card that's as potent as Stony Silence. When you play it early in the game, sometimes it can just be essentially a turn 2 win. It doesn't win you the game on the spot, but it basically guarantees you a win later on. So we'll see what Ollie can do through it.
So Ollie's gone ahead and drawn a card for his turn. Looks like he does still have that tower in his hand. Looks like he's got an Hoogland, so he's hoping that he can get to 8 mana to be able to cast that, which could happen in the next 2 turns if he happens to hit another Tron piece.
Yeah, and one thing that we might see is Ollie has a couple Nature's Claims in his sideboard, and now the only reason he would want it is against the Stony Silence, so it's unclear if Ollie would want to bring those Nature's Claims in. But if he knew Jeff's deck, knew his sideboard, he might consider it. So there may be an outside chance that Ollie can actually deal with this Stony Silence, although I feel it's a little unlikely.
Yeah, I can't imagine that he's going to be that interested in bringing in Nature's Claims. Stony Silence is a card that can hurt him, yes, if he has the right mix of cards, but it also has the potential to just do absolutely nothing if it's too late or if Ali just doesn't have the mix of cards that it's going to impact.
Yeah, the other thing too is if Ali can get enough mana, Hoogland and Ulamog are both ways that he can potentially deal with the Stony Silence.
So it looks like Ollie is going to go ahead and give Jeff Hoogland a life point using that Sylvan Scrying, find his last piece of Tron. And at this point, if Jeff doesn't interact with Ollie's mana, he's going to be facing down Hoogland next turn.
Yeah, this is actually really good for Ollie. Ollie may actually power through this Stony Silence despite it being typically such a good sideboard card against these Tron decks.
So Ollie's gone ahead and played his Urza's Mine and passed the turn. Now he does still have that Urza's Tower in his hand, but alongside that, Hoogland, it looked like there was a Wormcoil Engine, looked like it was an Ulamog. He just has an embarrassment of riches, just needs the mana to get there.
Yeah, and we can really see how important it was that Ollie was on the play. If Ollie had been on the draw, Ollie would have spent his first mana playing the Expedition map, and then Jeff would have had time to play the Stony Signs before Ollie could activate his Expedition map, effectively making it so that Ollie may not have been able to find all of his Tron pieces.
Yep, and it all comes back to Ollie just stealing that game on the mulligan to 4 by getting that Hoogland onto the battlefield on turn 4, which it looks like he might do the same thing here with a turn 4 Hoogland.
I mean, it worked before. It might work again.
So Jeff's going to draw for his turn. It's just going to be another land. I don't think that he had a way in hand to interact with Ollie's land, so this could just be a bad time for Jeff. Looks like he has a Burnt and Forge Tender. He probably brought that in to try and combat Pyroclasm.
Yeah.
But it looks like Ollie is just going to draw a card for his turn. Urza's Tower, Hoogland, going to -2 and clean up a lot of Jeff's board.
And this is a really, really big deal. Not only does it make it so that Stony Silence is gone and Ollie has essentially wiped Jeff's pressure, but it's really hard for Jeff to build a board when that Hoogland is in play. And we can see Jeff, trying to make some use of his creatures while he can on their way out.
Yeah, so he's going to path his own Birds of Paradise, try and get him a little bit more mana so he can eventually try and utilize the Court of Calling that's in his hand. But once again, he doesn't really have very many, if any, answers to that Hoogland, and it's just going to take over the board.
Yeah, I mean, Hoogland's a great card. I mean, we've seen it a ton in Standard, and we've seen these Tron decks starting to adopt it in Modern now. I mean, it's just so powerful. There's not much that you can do that's better than it.
This is actually pretty unfortunate for Jeff in games 1 and 3. Hoogland is a one-of in Ollie's deck.
Yeah.
So he's had it all the right times and all the right places. So Jeff's just going to go ahead and draw a card for his turn, going to play another land, cast the Wall of Omens, draw another card, just kind of shake his hands in a little bit of frustration, and I imagine he's just going to end up passing the turn back to Ollie, or he might play this Eternal Witness that's in his hand.
Yeah, Jeff is a strong soul, and he's going to try to battle it out as much as he can. I mean, if there's any outside chance that he can win, he's going to try to go for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Winning every single game for Jeff is really important, no matter how unlikely it may be. And so, he just is going to do what he can do.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line. Going to 3 losses in this tournament is drastically going to reduce their chance of being able to make the top 8. Ollie, I imagine, is going to try and make it back to the Players' Championship, because once you get a taste of it, you want to go back in battle and redeem yourself. So he's going to be traveling to a bunch of events this year. Jeff is sitting, fat and pretty, first place on top of the world, but that still doesn't mean he can relax. He has to try and get as many points as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the one way that Jeff could win this game is he has enough mana so that he could potentially do an end-of-turn restoration, untap, Kiki-Jiki. So, Jeff still has ways that he can go for a bit of a combo finish. It's unlikely that he'll be able to develop much of a board presence to mount an offensive that way. So I think that's going to be what he's going to be trying to play towards.
So it looks like Ollie is just going to Pyroclasm here to get rid of that Eternal Witness, and then use Hoogland to take care of the wall. With the rest of his mana, he's going to deploy a Wormcoil Engine. So six life chunks at a time isn't really going to do very much if you happen to do infinite damage like Jeff Hoogland's deck can do, but it does put a clock on the board. And at this point, Jeff really only has 1 or 2 turns to try and put something together before Ollie's going to take over this game.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie's certainly on his way to taking over the game. Jeff kind of needs to just go runner. He needs to draw a Restoration Angel, and then immediately afterwards, a Kiki-Jiki.
Yeah, it looks like Jeff has deployed that Birds of Paradise. I imagine his intent is to chump block this Wormcoil Engine. I think we could see Ollie plus the Hoogland to kill the Birds of Paradise and then get in with the Wormcoil.
Yeah, the line of play that you suggested would be a bit of a faster clock. But
but it looks like Jeff is just going to take the damage.
yeah, I thought that Birds of Paradise was specifically there as a chump block, but maybe he's looking to set up a Court of Calling.
Yeah, where he wants to. I have to imagine that if he doesn't chump block, then Ollie is going to shoot the birds anyways, which is what he did. Now we do have an Oblivion Stone from Ollie, and he's just going to.
Yeah, the Oblivion Stone is essentially the nail in the coffin, because even if Jeff is able to end of turn cast Restoration Angel, untap, and draw Kiki Jiki, that Oblivion Stone is going to be able to break that up at instant speed.
Yeah, he also would have been able to put a fate counter on his Ugin, keep it around. So we all have seen what Ugin's fate was before, and in this instance, it was to win games 1 and 3 for Ollie Aintrazi, who's going to take the match from Jeff Hoogland. He's going to go on to 9-2 with Green Red Tron. Jeff Hoogland's going to move on to 8-3 with his Kiki Court deck. And I don't think that that's the last we're going